Welcome to It's a Woman's World, where we'll meet achieving women making a difference in our community. I'm Carolyn Bruna. Our guest is Pamela Sams, a financial advisor and president of Jackson Sams Wealth Strategies. Pamela is also known as a financial navigator, now helping women to navigate the rough waters on their journey to financial independence. Welcome, Pamela.
Thank you for having me, Carolyn.
Pam. We're going to call you Pam.
Pam would be great. I always say the only person that ever called me Pamela was my mother-in-law.
Mother-in-law. Oh, okay.
For some reason.
Then I won't do that.
No, but that's fine. Pam is great.
Okay. But actually, I was going to say that we met quite a few years ago at National Speakers Association one time, and then recently we've reconnected on LinkedIn,
yes.
So that was kind of fun.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. LinkedIn is a good connector.
Isn't it?
To really meet a lot of people that
Yes.
are reconnect with people.
Reconnect, and to do business with.
Correct.
So yeah, that's really good.
I meet a lot of people there.
Yeah. I know you've got a story to tell us. It was how you got started and how you decided to specialize in women's financial wellness. So tell us your story.
Great. In 2001, unfortunately, I lost my father.
Oh, sorry.
He had been sick for a while, but it was nothing really sudden. But during that time period, my father handled most of the household finances. As in any older generation, a lot of the men handled the money in the family. So my mother had a really hard time during that time, really during the transition of after my father passed away, learning how to deal with money in her in the household. So my siblings and I really had to help her a lot during that transition to figure out what she had in terms of resources, if she was going to be okay, if she was going to have enough money. I went to school a couple of years before that to get my MBA, so I did have some financial knowledge really to assist her. But during that struggle, it's kind of hit me that I'm sure there's other women out there with challenges, just like my mom. So I decided to become licensed as a financial advisor, and then really just focus on specializing with women, because I really didn't want any woman to have to go through what my mother had went through when she was trying to navigate her rough waters financially in her household.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, you know, while you were talking, I was thinking, taking the classes and the course in that, is it a difficult for other people who might want to try to work in financial advising, or and how long does it take?
It depends on how long you want to take the courses. Usually it starts with a sponsorship from a financial institution to sponsor you to get your licenses. There's a Series 7 that's involved. That's a general, what they call general rep with the SEC regulation, and then you have what they call a Series 66 or 63, which is more of a state investment advisor. And then sometimes people would get like a life and health license to complement that for other things that may pop up in people's financial lives. So it's usually a self-study. There are courses that people can take as well to
I guess you always have to do, you know, keep up with things and specialize.
And specialize,
like
and then you do have, of course, continuing education credits that you have to take each year. You know, for that.
Interesting, yeah. Of course, you have to be good with numbers and figures and enjoy it, right?
Yes.
Which I guess, obviously, you do, right?
Exactly. And that's one of the challenges that, you know, a lot of women have is dealing with their money, is that they don't like numbers.
Exactly.
And they shy away from that.
That's a shame. It's part of, I don't know, it's happened for so many years, and, you know, there's so much data about in school, and women not being geared or leading toward a particular subject, or it's like sciences and math and all that kind of thing. Yeah,
exactly, and that's why the STEM programs are really important these days, because that's what a lot of women have challenges with money today, is that we are psychologically told that girls aren't good at math, boys are
Yes.
more good with numbers,
Right.
and at an early age we learn that that we're not good with numbers.
Right, and it's
So
not
that-
true, really.
And that's not
Yeah,
true.
it's not true,
And it's not true.
exactly.
And
It's
so
just that
sometimes that
society.
kind of yeah, no, exactly. You carry that into your adult lives, and then
Yes, yeah.
you don't end up looking at the finances as often as you should.
Well, you're a good role model, so I'm really happy that you're here and talking about it.
Thank you
yeah.
very much.
And I really loved your swan logo that you have. And I know when we were talking about it before, I saw the swan, of course, and you were telling me that it actually flips. And it's also a woman's face. And it took me a while to focus
Yeah.
on that. Yeah.
It's one of those optical illusions. You have to
Exactly.
see it. So
Yeah, I
it's
had
a
looked it up,
swan,
and
and
that's
then
what it
there's
said,
a
optical
woman's face.
illusion. Yeah,
So
so
really,
tell us about it, yeah.
kind of match that story is that in the financial world, there's a black swan, which means kind of uncertain situations. And we know in our financial lives there's always uncertain situations. So I decided to have the swan as kind of the main symbol or main theme. But then I started to work with my branding and my marketing team as well. And it really became kind of a maybe twofold type of meaning. One, which is an acronym, which is Sleep Well at Night, so SWAN.
I see.
And then also the way that there's transformation in your financial life. So really taking people's what I call ugly duckly situations and then transforming them into beautiful financial swans. So that's the way that I really wanted the meaning of that swan to be. Of course, is number one, the black swan, similar to uncertainty, but there's ways to really get you on track financially. So really having that swan. So I really like to have people really consider themselves when they come to my financial practice, financial swans.
Oh, I love that. That's a wonderful logo, and it has such meaning. It's really great. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So tell me, when a woman comes to you, what are the steps that you go through in order to figure out her financial needs?
Yeah, that's a good question. My approach is a little different than most. I try to get some backstory on women's situation, really trying to figure out what their hopes and their dreams are, and what their values and what their goals are, because that really kind of determines what do you want to achieve in life. I always tell people financial planning is nothing more than what do you want for your life, and then really matching money to it, because everything has a price tag with what you want to do. So if you want a new vacation home, or if you want to send your kids to college, or whatever the case may be, there's going to be some monetary value with that. So it really starts with values and goals. And then from there, we can kind of determine what is needed for their financial plan. But I also talk to them about their money story. Money stories are really those internal tracks that we tell ourselves when we grow up with money, how we view money. We've heard all these sayings, money doesn't grow on trees, or, all of these different quotes that we hear. So that actually affects our money story and how we deal with money in our lives. A statistic that I saw recently actually is that your early money memories are formed at age 6. So I tell most women is that if you have your 6-year-old running your finances, maybe not. Maybe don't want that to happen. But knowing that that's how you're approaching your finances sometimes is really helpful. So I talk to them about their money mindset and their money stories early on in that process.
Oh, this is amazing. I've never heard of anything like that. Age 6.
Age 6.
Because the family, I guess, discusses money?
Yes.
And you pick it up as a child, of course.
Of course, and then the way it's handled in your household. So if you got an allowance, or if you didn't get an allowance, or you've heard conversations that your parents have had, maybe arguments about money, that really shapes the way that you deal with money later on in life. Or were your parents frugal? Were they spendthrift? All of those really affect it. And like I said, usually at about the age 6, you formulate what type of view that you have about money.
That's so interesting, because while you're speaking, I'm thinking to myself, oh yes, I see now my mother had a different approach to money than my dad did.
Correct.
I never thought about that before. It's very interesting.
Exactly. And then what ends up happening
of course
is
affects
that,
me, and
exactly.
you know, if I'm spending too much, oh yeah, you know, following my dad. If I'm not spending, oh, I guess my mom's influence is there.
Exactly.
You know,
and
funny.
usually that's some of the traits that you pick up is just based on your parents. So either you say, I really just don't want to be like that, or you end up matching what your parents did. And sometimes people get stuck in that rut, and they have no idea of that's what is occurring in their financial situation.
Yeah, really interesting. April, you were telling me, actually, is Financial Literacy Month.
It is.
Yeah. So since many women are intimidated by money, what kind of steps do you go through with them, or would they have to go through to become financially literate?
That's a very good question. Really understand and prioritize their finances. As natural nurturers, women tend to put our needs last. So sometimes we don't prioritize the finances. So that's one of the areas you really need to focus in on is doing that. What you also want to make sure is that, you know, check your attitude about money and that money mindset that we just talked about. But you also want to make sure that you develop some type of awareness financially. And what I mean by that is really know your blind spots, know where you're lacking in terms of your own money management. And if you need help, seek guidance. Because a lot of times people just kind of let things go and let things fester, but they don't seek guidance as well. And then really just kind of accumulating as much knowledge as you can. It's the unfortunate piece, but now I think a lot of schools are really putting personal finance back into the schools. But prior, nobody really taught you how to deal with money.
You're
it was
so
you
right. Yes.
you grew up, oftentimes you went to college, you learned a little bit about it there, you know, trying to make ends meet there. And then you hop out into the workforce and you have really no clue on how to deal with this money thing besides what you learned in your household. So a lot of times that's a challenge. So really try to accumulate as much knowledge as you can, either through taking courses. There's a lot of online courses.
I was just going to say which ways, because you're right. I remember in school we didn't really have anything connected to finances.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we'd have to take them on our own, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so taking courses is one. And then really there's tons of personal finance books out there. So really picking up a book or two. And then there's a lot of local seminars that are around. I do several in Loudoun County as well, really just to educate people on what's going on in the money world. So really gaining knowledge. And then once you have the knowledge, it's really implementation. Because, you know, I always call it shelf help because we can read things and we can do things, but if you don't implement, you're no better off in the process. So really, once you have learned and got the knowledge, really applying that in order to achieve financial success for yourself. So those are really some really good steps to encourage financial literacy, as well.
I want to talk about also not just literacy, but some of the mistakes that that women make. But I think just name them, and then we're going to come back and actually go into them in detail. What are some of the common mistakes that you find women? Some
of the common mistakes, as I mentioned before, is really not prioritizing the finances. Okay. That's one of them. Not knowing, we had talked about the financial literacy just 2 seconds ago, not being financially literate, and then also really not paying attention. And that's what I get a lot of times is that we run on autopilot because we don't have a lot of those money management skills early. We just kind of live day to day and we don't look at the things as we're going along. So really not paying attention to the finances. And some of that goes back to I just don't want to deal with money or the numbers. And so you don't look at those. But those are really some of the top ones that I see often is really not prioritizing it, not paying attention, and then really just not focusing in on the money piece and just kind of letting things go.
Well, actually, that was a perfect summary. I hope that other people listen to this, women particularly, and think about these things to learn and to use themselves.
Yes.
Okay, we'll take a break.
Thank you.
We'll break for a short public service announcement.
got a job to do today.
Have a good first day at work, Mom.
Donate to Goodwill. Help provide job training in your community.
Welcome back to It's a Woman's World. We're speaking with Pamela Sams, a financial advisor. We were talking about the financial, the concerns that women have.
Yes.
So tell us about them a little bit, and then you're going to share with us some takeaways about these concerns.
Yes.
So the concerns were about education, retirement, and just kind of overall.
Correct.
And so let's go on to takeaways for these. So the takeaway for what should people do, what should women do, particularly when they think about retirement planning.
Great. Retirement planning is usually one of those areas that people, at least women, come to me with. It's really looking at starting early. So if I have young women out in the audience, it's really starting early as possible. Einstein is tasked with quoting that compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. Those who understand it capitalize off of it, and those who don't end up eventually paying for it. So the longer time horizon you have to retirement, the earlier you start, the better off you would be. So that's one of the areas that I really focus in on is making sure people start early. But then also contributing as often as possible, every year if you can, because each year it could make a difference in the overall nest egg. And if you have access to your employer plan through work, really take advantage of that, because you have, of course, tax-deferred investing, but then also some of the companies match your funds. So really, you're leaving free money on the table if you don't take advantage of your employer plan, because they do often match as well. So you want to make sure that you do that. When you get your retirement plan in place, really make sure you monitor your portfolio on an annual basis or as needed. A lot of times when I meet with women, I ask them, when was the last time that you made any changes in your employer plan? And there's like, well, when I first signed up, that could have been several years ago, could be 20 years. So really understanding what the portfolio and what that does. And then also looking at rebalancing your portfolio as needed. And what that is really making sure it's adequate for your needs, because once you put it in place, sometimes there are some changes in your portfolio. You need to rebalance to put it back in place. So really making sure you have those key things in place for your retirement plan, contributing, and then really making sure you're saving as much as you can. In terms of education, with the rising cost of college, people come to me often and say, how in the heck are we even going to afford sending our kids to college because it's so much? So really looking at understanding your funding options that's available. A lot of times people don't complete the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. That determines how much aid that families can get.
Well, a lot of times people don't realize that they might qualify.
Correct.
So they don't realize that it's not only age or your status as far as monetary, but other things fit in as well.
Other things fit in as well. So sometimes people discount it and they don't fill it out at all. I was like, what's the harm in filling it out? At least you'll know where you stand. That also gives you the EFC number, which is your expected family contribution. So it'll spit out basically what your family can contribute to a college education.
Oh, interesting.
But according to Sally Mae, they put out every year how America pays for college. 35% of the cost of college is usually covered through grants and scholarships, and then about 8% of parent contribution. So a lot of times you don't know that, and then really understanding which funding options are available. The scholarships, there's 529 plans, there's prepaid 529 plans. That's where you would lock in a college education now, so a 2018 college cost for anticipation of your child
for a
going
child,
to,
no matter
exactly.
would it be no matter what age or because some people as soon as the child is born, they do start thinking about that and preparing for it. It's interesting when you were talking about the retirement planning. it really sounded like the actual savings that people, the savings blueprint that people should follow right away, not only in retirement, but starting early, contributing as much as you can, keeping a track of your portfolio. These are things, just keeping track of your own finances. It's amazing. I was thinking about just saving and learning.
Exactly. But, the women, we are a little tasked when it comes to retirement planning, because sometimes we're out of the workplace at some period of time. The average is about 12 years of women being out of the workplace. So sometimes you're not able to, of course, during that time period, save enough. And then also you're not contributing to Social Security. So that discounts our Social Security benefits as well. So we have a little bit of a challenge when it comes to retirement planning. That's why it's really important to focus in on those key aspects that I mentioned before.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, I hadn't put in all those different aspects of it. Yeah, very, because everybody has a different way of.
Everybody has
some
a
people have
different
kids,
formula.
some don't, and it all goes into your whole family planning, into the retirement. Interesting. Yeah.
Exactly.
And education, again, starting early and as much as you can, I guess, or depending, and then remembering to investigate different ways that you might it might be financed through some other source.
So through some other it's then again it comes to the knowledge, really knowing what your funding options are. So those plans that are available to you. A lot of them are tax advantage plans. Make sure you do consult your tax advisor. How it works out for you. But the 529s, the prepaids, the Coverdales, any of those combinations will be able to really provide those resources you need in order to fund a college education for your child.
That's interesting. And then the last one is overall financial health takeaways. Tell us things that we can use right now for our overall financial health.
Exactly. I kind of run it on a kind of a 4-tier process. When you're thinking about your overall financial health, some of the areas to think about, 4 of them. One is cash management, and that's really where you're looking at your budget, your debt, credit cards, your cash reserve. So really making sure you have a solid foundation in that area. The next one is risk management, which is really all of your insurances. So making sure you have adequate insurance, disability, life insurance, homeowners insurance, your car insurance, all of that goes into financial wellness in that particular area. The other one is investment management, really making sure, if you're saving for your retirement or you're saving for a new home or you're saving for education, that you have a proper portfolio or investment strategy, so to speak, in that key. And then the fourth one is estate planning. When we unfortunately transition from this earth, you don't want them to leave your loved ones trying to figure it out for you.
Yeah.
So really, what type of legacy planning do you want to do as well? So looking at those 4 key areas, making sure you have financial wellness in all of those. To make sure you're, I call it financially sound. If you have everything pretty much covered in those 4 areas, you would be financially sound.
Well, that's very interesting. 4-pronged. I like that. I was thinking about, you're going to tell in a few minutes, your website, or where people can look you up and get a hold of you. But since I'm thinking about it, why don't you tell people what it is? And what my question is, though, is there information on your website giving some of these takeaways so that people can pull it up and see, refresh their minds about some of the things you're saying?
Yes, the website is www.jacksonsams.com. It has wealth of information in terms of retirement planning, investing, education, the life insurances, all of those. It also has a lot of little vignettes and webinars and all of these particular tools, really to do gain a lot of that knowledge that we talked about previously, to really educate yourself. So that's where you would get a lot of that information from.
Oh, that's wonderful. I need to do this myself. That's basically why I'm asking this. And as we were saying, I guess I need you. I guess most women feel the need to have some help to plan and to do what they need to do financially through their lives. Yeah. Gosh. I know you've written for some publications, so tell us what article has brought you the most feedback that you gotten response from and enjoyed doing.
Exactly. It was actually one that that I used to write for Market Watch as a retire mentor. One of them, it was the title was called "It's Not Your Grandfather's Retirement," and it's really talks about the challenge that we have today versus what our parents dealt with. And back when our parents were retiring, it was they had a pension, they had a really good, Social Security benefits. They didn't have to do a lot of planning, which is different now because most of us don't have access to pensions. It's more of what they call a defined contribution plan, which are 401ks and 403bs and all of those, versus a defined benefit plan, which is the pensions. So our grandparents had access to those things, and sometimes we don't have access to those. So it makes it challenging. It talks about kind of the three-legged stool concept, which is back in the day it was pension, Social Security, savings. A lot of times now we don't have the three legs anymore. So pension may be going away or don't have access to that. So we rely a lot on our savings. And then depending on where Social Security is, who knows with that may not be as big of a benefit as our parents had in the past.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And also, well, tell me a couple of the other, there was another article, I think, or two that you were going to just mention. Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of them was really geared towards women, and unfortunately it talked a lot about keeping up with the Joneses. So really looking at people's lifestyles and trying to emulate those. And it was really focusing in on deal with your own financial house and making sure you have the things that you need for you and your family, and really not looking outside of that, kind of keep up this kind of persona, so to speak, with whatever other people have. Really focusing on having sound money management for yourself, and not so much what your colleagues are. So a lot of that, and unfortunately, a lot of times we as women fall into that that trap of trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Keeping up too much.
Having the fashion outfits and all of these sort of things. Yeah.
Okay, tell us three important things that you think people should remember about their finances. Three of the most important.
Yeah, the most important thing is really know your financial situation. Like I said before, a lot of times we just kind of bury our heads in the sand and we just kind of day-to-day our lives, but we really don't know everything. So really knowing what your inflows and outflows are in your household, what's coming in, what's going out, making sure you have a proper budget, you're not overspending. In what your debt situation is like, how much you have on credit cards, what the interest rates are on those credit cards, what your investments look like. So overall, really just knowing your financial situation. And then the other one is really controlling your own destiny. Like I said, it's all about you. It's not where, I always say, it's not a matter of where you start, it's where you finish. And the destination is really financial freedom or financial independence. And I always encourage women to really think about what they want, what financial freedom looks like for them. So I always say, it's financial freedom is to be, do, and have whatever your heart's desire. So if you're able to get your financial house in order, that's the destination. So don't really worry about, all of the things that happened to you in your past. You didn't do this right. You didn't do this right.
Okay.
It's really what the destination is.
Okay, gosh, this is interesting and great. And you know what? I shouldn't even say this, but it's work. We have to really work at it, don't we?
We have to work at it.
Oh,
we
gosh.
have to work at it.
Yeah, well, it's been wonderful. So
what's
the last thing you want to leave people with when they think about their own financial wellness?
I just really want to encourage women to have confidence, because a lot of times, I get people to say, "Where do I start? I don't know how to do this." But really having confidence, because you can do it. It just really takes the work. But you can do it.
And the time to sit and to read it and to read your website and other financial things.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Carolyn.
I hope you've enjoyed meeting our guest, Pamela Sams, and that you've learned some information about financial wellness. If you know a woman who's gone above and beyond to contribute to our community, please email us. We're itsawomansworld@mmctv.org. Remember, it's a woman's world. I'm Carolyn Bruna. See you next time.